Hi, and welcome to the first in a series of Project Learn microlearnings. This session is an overview of Project Learn, and it sets up some of the other sessions in the series, which will dive into more detail. As we get started, I want to invite you to reflect on the best learning experience you've ever had. This could be a learning experience from your childhood or a recent experience in a formal setting like school, or an informal setting where you may have taught yourself something or learned something with a mentor. But whatever it is, take a moment to think about that best learning experience and then try to identify what made it so great. For this and other reflections, you're always invited to pause the video to take some time to think or write down your answers, or talk with a colleague if you're walking through these microlearnings in a group. I'll share one example if you're still thinking. For me, one great learning experience I had was being sort of a counselor in training in a youth development organization. And what made it so great is that everything I was learning was immediately applicable to the role that I was meant to play. So it was very hands-on, very application-based. I had a great supervisor who was coaching me along the way, so that coaching and support made it a great learning experience. And I was part of a cohort of other counselors in training, so it was very relational, and the learning community also made it great. So once you've identified your best learning experience and what made it so great, hold on to that throughout this session. The reason I wanted to ask you to do that is to have an emotional connection to our big goal here, which is about creating transformational learning experiences, but more specifically, ensuring that all young people will be more effective, engaged, adaptive learners who are on track to graduate with a plan for the future. Just to unpack that goal a bit, effective learners are able to build and use skills. Engaged learners connect emotionally to what they're learning. They care about what they're doing, and they're building social and emotional skills in addition to academic skills. Adaptive learners are flexible, and they're able to apply what they've learned in the past to brand new situations that they've never encountered before. So adaptive learners are great creative problem solvers. Of course, we want all young people to be on track to graduate with a plan for the future. But we also know just getting to that graduation stage isn't the full goal. The plan for the future piece is so important because we want to equip and inspire young people to pursue great futures that they're excited about. And so that brings us to the topic of this session, which is Project Learn. Project Learn is a holistic, evidence-based approach to supporting youth-centered learning in clubs. You may have seen Project Learn listed as a program, but it's much bigger than any single targeted program. It's an overall strategy or an overall approach inclusive of programming, staff practices, a learning environment, partnerships, and more, all supporting academic success for all youth in clubs. Since I mentioned that it's based in this approach of youth-centered learning, I want to define that and say that youth-centered learning is an approach to teaching and learning in which young people with their unique strengths and needs and interests and identities are really at the center. And then flexible opportunities and supports are designed around that young person to respond to their unique experiences. So this is a contrast to a one-size-fits-all approach to education, and it's really designed to be responsive and to take a holistic view, understanding that clubs can be part of a bigger learning ecosystem for each young person. The Project Learn approach is organized into 5 key components. And subsequent microlearnings will go into more detail about each of these components. But overall, also want you to know that Project Learn is an evidence-based program model. That means that it's been rigorously evaluated and it has demonstrated the impact that it was designed to have. This is great news because it means that this approach works and that when clubs implement Project Learn with fidelity, they can count on young people experiencing improved academic outcomes, like some of the outcomes you see listed on this slide. If you want more detail about the evidence basis about how the study was conducted and the specific outcomes, the citation on this slide is a link to the full study. So that's where you can read more about the research and the evidence basis behind this approach. Now let's talk about these 5 key components just quickly so that you'll get a sense of which components you might want to dive into more detail with subsequent microlearning sessions. First is homework help and tutoring. A great service that clubs can provide to young people is coming alongside them and assisting with their homework and schoolwork and also offering some tutoring. This is an opportunity to do 2 big things. One is to offer academic support so that young people aren't just completing their schoolwork on their own, but they have the support of a caring and trusted mentor. And also to offer some targeted skill building through tutoring. This means that when staff are helping young people with their homework and they realize, for instance, that a young person could use some extra help adding fractions, or they could use some extra help writing a persuasive essay, that they use that information to offer some targeted tutoring and help young people to build up that skill. Second is high yield learning activities. This is a favorite component of Project Learn because it includes playful learning, teachable moments, skill building activities, and sort of fun with a purpose. High yield learning activities are often the parts of a club experience that invite young people to fall in love with learning. And it's also a great opportunity to build social and emotional skills. Which includes things like a healthy relationship with yourself and others, responsible decision-making, the ability to recognize and manage emotions, things like that. The key ideas for high-yield learning activities are to choose great activities, make sure you're using great content, and then to facilitate in a way that supports active learning. Third is family, caregiver, and community involvement. We know that caregivers are so central to a young person's learning experience. And so the third component here is to ensure that the club is engaging families and caregivers as partners in a child's learning. This includes a need to communicate creatively with families and caregivers, and also to invite the community into the club by recruiting community volunteers. Fourth is collaboration with schools. When schools work together with clubs, youth are better supported in achieving academic success, positive social and emotional development, health and wellness, and all sorts of other outcomes. And so partnering well with local schools is a central component of Project Learn. This includes communicating and sharing resources in support of common goals, and also partnering with educators to support individual students, which is a great way to be more responsive and offer that youth-centered learning. The fifth component of Project Learn is motivation and incentives. Motivation is, of course, so important for learning. Young people are motivated in different ways and in different situations. And so some of the key ideas we'll talk about in the motivation and incentive session are ways to celebrate youth for effort and progress, to give youth opportunities to recognize one another, and we'll unpack intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So those are those 5 key components of the strategy, which again encompasses the entire club experience within and throughout the Learning Center across the club day. And you'll get to learn more about those in sessions to come. Quickly wanted to call out that the resources supporting Project Learn are available on the Project Learn page on bgca.net. And because Project Learn has been adapted to support Native youth, you can also find the adapted version of Project Learn on the Native Services site. Before we wrap up this session, I want to invite you to reflect on 2 questions. Take a moment to write down or to share with a colleague what aspects of Project Learn do you think will be most beneficial to the youth you serve right now? And when you consider the work your club is currently doing, what aspects of Project Learn do you need additional support with? Feel free to pause here if you want more time to reflect. And finally, each micro-learning session will close with a charge to you, a recommendation of something to try next. And so what I'd recommend you try next is visit the Project Learn page on bgca.net, explore the resources that are in the program documents section, and specifically download the Project Learn manual so that you've got that foundational resource. Thanks so much.